Well, good morning, everybody. It's now gone 10 o'clock, and my apologies. I've just been notified that we were muted in the first part of that session, so my apologies on that. So I will, just for the benefit, just drop back and quickly pop through the first few slides. So my apologies, we were muted on there. Hopefully you can hear me now. So welcome, first of all, to the new release webinar for Chalkstring. First of all, the housekeeping side of things, which we've talked about. Hopefully you've read that, and it was my fault that I was muted, not you. So my apologies on that one. So hopefully you can now hear me. I'm Barry Chapman. I'm one of the founding directors and the managing director of Chalkstring, and I'll be hosting your webinar today. My background is very much in quantity surveying and in civil engineering, and if you wish to go to my LinkedIn bio, then of course you can find out more about me, but I won't go over that in detail today, but I'll be hosting your webinar today. The reason for the webinar today really is because about 3 weeks ago we released a major version of our software. Our software is being updated all the time because it's a modern cloud-based system, but this was a very big release of the software. And therefore today's session is all about giving you an overview of the software and particularly focusing on all the new features and enhancements we've added to the system, focusing on those within the webinar. And obviously that will involve a software demonstration as we go through. We will record the webinar, so you will get that distributed to you. We will email that to you as a matter of course following the webinar, so no need to make copious notes during the session. And the agenda, as you've seen, is pretty straightforward. It's an overview of the system, focusing very much on the new features we've added, and then a summary at the end. And today's session will take no more than an hour. Even with the false start, I will make sure that we finish by 11 o'clock as promised. So what is Chalkstring? So if you're new to the system and not seen it before, it's an integrated system covering a whole host of things, but in particular, estimating, procurement, and cost reporting. And the software has been written specifically for specialist subcontractors. So these are subcontractors involved in the supply and fit of various trades, but that's really the background behind the software. It was developed originally by a specialist supply and fit subcontractor involved in the interior fit out trade. And the software covers everything both pre-contract and also post-contract. So covering your estimating and tendering of the job, but also managing your live project during the build process, right up to final account. And I'll go into that in more detail in a second. But essentially it's one integrated system that covers the whole project from end to end, but it's purpose written for specialist subbies. So the names you would have seen before when I was on this slide, these are typically users of ours. The common link between them all really is they are all supply and fit specialist subcontractors in construction. They range in size from reasonably small, a few million turnover, up to some much bigger companies in there, sort of 50, 60 million turnover. So there's a whole range of sizes of customers there. And in terms of trades, you can see we've got many different trades there. We've got interior fit out, dry lining, SFS, facades, we've got joinery, damp proofing, brickwork, etc. So regardless of your trade, if you're doing supply and fit specialist subcontracting, then we can certainly help you with Chalkstring, and those are some of our example customers. In terms of what the software is, it's a modern cloud-based system. So rather than having lots of different spreadsheets and systems and trying to manually transfer data between all your systems, it's about having one set of data that sits in the cloud, and everyone within your organization can access that data. And of course, you can apply permissions and access rights to everybody to control what they can see and what they can do. But ultimately, you've got one set of data in Chalkstring. It sits in the cloud, and it's based on Amazon Web Services, which is our chosen hosting platform. So you have the benefits of all the security of Amazon and all the unlimited storage and the encryption and all the data protection of Amazon. But all your users, all your staff, can be accessing one single set of data within Chalkstring. So everything is inextricably linked, and there's no need to constantly retype data and move it from system to system. And we're very much about working in the modern technology world with iPads and phones on site, and Chalkstring will work both with iOS and also with Android. So you've got that flexibility to choose which system you want. In terms of what Chalkstring does, obviously we're going to go into the software, but just to give you a snapshot of what the software is capable of, at the heart of Chalkstring is a database of your information. So your materials, all your prices that you buy those materials from your various different distributors, all the ways in which you pay your labor, subcontract labor, and a whole load of templates and other information that's very personal to your business. And that data is something that we set up for you as a customer, and you can then use through the live parts of your project. So the first thing would happen within the software is that within the estimating part of the software, you would use that information to price the project and to choose who your supplier is and set your pricing and submit your tender to your client. And I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail in the software, but essentially you're using rate build-ups, bills of quantities, main contractor discounts, prelims, all the things you would use traditionally within Chalkstring are used to create your tender and set your budgets. Then once you've secured the project, that information is in Chalkstring already. So that information is then used both for the pre-contract estimating, but also the post-contract commercials. So there's, in terms of commercial handover, that information already exists. There's no need to do a complex drawn out handover process. The surveyors can just pick up that information and run with it. Needless to say, of course, they can review the tender and they can make changes and go out and recost the project and go out to get better buying prices and so on, add value engineering into it. But ultimately, you don't have to put the data in a second time to run the project. It then manages your procurement. So you have live dynamic material bills that are constantly being updated with variations and so on. And so that will enable your purchasing team to pull off and generate purchase orders. And again, I'll go into that in more detail in the software. It enables you to track the delivery tickets, the PODs, and also therefore to reconcile invoices when they come into the business, because you have the material bill order, you've got the delivery tickets and the invoices all side by side, so much easier reconciliation of your invoices. There is obviously the option to make changes to the scope, whether it's variation orders that are being added or remeasuring at any stage. You can walk around site and update site progress with the software, which will instantly create your internal valuations. The software generates your applications for payment automatically at the touch of a button. And ultimately, then it also enables you to manage your subcontractor labor payments as they're coming in. So if you've got lots of subcontractors working for you, charging labor only, then you can manage that process, check they're not overbooking you, and approve them in a very controlled way. So those are the main parts of what Chalkstring does. Hopefully you can see it's been very much written for specialist subcontractors by virtue of what it does. What it then does, it takes all that information and displays it to you in a series of real-time cost reports and dashboards. So you can see at any stage you want to all about the health of your project. It's essentially a live CVR at any point in the contract. And then it also talks to account software. So depending on what accounting system you choose to use, Chalkstring can talk to that and export information out into your account software. So hopefully you can see the software does a fair few things for you. We're going to focus on some of these specific areas, really focusing on the new features within the system. So first of all, within estimating, it's all about producing competitive tenders quickly. And the sort of things we can do, again, we're not going to show you all these things today, but you can now import client bills of quantities into your project if you wish to save time. You can structure your project in any way you want to by putting in different zones and subzones to break your project down, to manage your project. You can reuse your own specific templates to save you time. So if you're doing a repetitive bit of work, you can pull in a template and reuse it to save you creating rate build-ups from scratch. You can choose who your suppliers are and apply their pricing to the project, because the software will know all your different supplier prices. You can generate quotes, which you can send out to your suppliers for project-specific pricing if you need to, and re-import that information back into the software. You're able to compare alternatives side by side. So maybe you want to compare two different suppliers or maybe different brands of materials. You can compare those two things side by side and then make informed decision within the software. And you can also export out material bills and labor bills. And this is pre-contract, don't forget. This is before you secured the contract. This is the ability to send that information out so you can see what materials you will need to buy and what your budgets are for labor to pass to your contracts managers, etc. So purely within estimating, those are the kind of things which we're going to touch on within the software. On the procurement side of things, it's all about ordering what you need at the right price at the right time. That's the crucial bit here. So the software has within it dynamic material bills, which constantly tell you what materials you need. And you can filter these down in many different ways to make sure you drill down to what you need. But it's about making sure that the software will tell you at all times what materials that you need to buy. From that, it will then automate purchase orders for you. So avoiding any errors and wasting time producing POs. Again, I'll be showing you these things. You've got options in there now for bulk purchasing. So if you want to buy lots of materials simultaneously and you don't want to add them individually to the PO, you can do that in one go now. So it's all about speed and controllability. The software will track delivery tickets. So you've got the evidence for deliveries that have been delivered to site so that when the invoices come in, it's much easier to reconcile the invoices. And the software is managing both your accrued costs or your committed costs and also your actual costs simultaneously. And from a valuation perspective, that's clearly very important. And you can pull off material reports anytime you want to with all the information about what's needed on site, what's on site already, what's been ordered, any deviations on price, etc. So the whole procurement triangle is being covered within the software. So in terms of valuations, it's really all about trying to make you more productive and reducing the tedious tasks which people complain about, certainly at month end. So with Chalkstring, you can walk around site updating your progress with an iPad. The software will automatically create the internal valuation as you walk around. So by the time you get back to your site hut, the valuation has been prepared for you. It will, by default, automatically include the materials on site should you wish it to. You can choose not to, but by default, it will include the materials on site with a markup on there for you to save you going around site looking for materials and counting the materials. When you're ready, it will then generate the application for payment, and that's just with a single click, it will produce a detailed application. You have options over whether you wish to use a matrix or a white card format of application for the residential type of work a lot of our customers do, or you can use a traditional bill format if you're doing more commercial projects. So you have options to choose the formats you want to export your data in. Of course, you can do things like overbooking, which is something that most of our customers would choose to do for a number of reasons. The most common one being that if you're doing the valuation midweek, mid-month, of course, you might want to project your value to the end of the month. So you have that ability to overbook. And you can also manage your certification and payment certificates and pay less notices as they come in. So the software knows at all times what has been certified and what's outstanding, etc. So the software will manage the whole valuation and application process for you. And again, that's another area we'll go into in the software. And in terms of real-time cost reporting, it's about giving you real-time live information at your fingertips so you can see the health of your projects at all times. So we create a series of dashboards, and you can see some examples on the screen here, which are very clear, very easy to understand, and are generated for you. They are essentially live CVRs on a project by project basis, showing you all the information you expect to see. So you can always see things like your projected costs, your projected revenues and margins at all times. The cost versus your value. So these, we'll go into it in more detail, but these green and blue bars are showing me value and cost side by side, and that's including both accrued and actual costs on your projects. Your applied figures versus what's been certified and tracking any shortfall between the two. Clear picture of what your margin has been to date, what you've made so far off what you've applied to date. All your live projections versus your budget, so you can see if you're going over budget on any particular part of the project. And you can consolidate this information if you wish to over a number of projects. So you can see if you're looking at, for example, cash flow, you can start to look at all your projects and how that's going to affect your cash flow in terms of your overall performance of all your live contracts, or by client, or however you choose to look at it. So from a real-time costing perspective, there's a lot of information within the system which I'll take you through, and a lot of this information has been enhanced. And you've also got accounts interoperability. So you've got the ability to pass this information across to your accounting software. So regardless of which account system you choose to use that's in place already in your business, Chalkstring will export out line item information for all your approved costs and your approved revenues when you're ready. So what's new specifically? Well, the sort of things we've done in this new release now are we've totally changed the interface to make it easier, quicker, more intuitive to use the software. So if you've had demonstrations before, you will see changes there. We've put in a new rate build-up format to make it easier and quicker to control your pricing and how you build up your rates. We've added additional and new zoning functionality to handle up to 1,000 zones. So if you're doing residential work now, there's no limit on the number of zones, and you can now export data out into Excel to be able to populate it with quantities. We've changed the bill formats to make them quicker, easier, simpler, more powerful, to be able to select and add things into material orders and into paying your subcontract labours and so on. We've added new filtering options to make it more powerful, to be able to say filter and select what you need. The new bulk ordering functionality is a way of very quickly adding bulk or mass orders of materials and labor to your orders, but without having to do them individually. So it's about saving you time, but not building up any contingency in doing so. And we've added a whole load of new visual tools on the progress and the valuation side to give you more control and a better picture on your valuations. So there's a lot going on there. There's too much to go through in huge detail on this 1 hour session today, but I'm going to try and pick up on some of these things as we go through. So some examples, for example, on the rate build-up interface. This is a new interface that you won't have seen before, where hopefully you can see here you have a product name at the top, or a bill item name, descriptions, you've got the revenue, and you've got the price associated with it. You can obviously control overhead, profit margins, etc. But then you've got a breakdown of all your materials and your labor activities, quantities you require, the units of measurement, the wastage, the selected price, where that price has come from. So all that information is visible on a very simple, compact screen for building up your rate build-ups. And this is all new. So if you're working with spreadsheets now, hopefully the concept of what I'm talking about there is very comfortable. The new bill formats I talk about is all about simplifying down how we display the information. So you can see different materials required here, different zones across the top, but we've simplified this down and added in a whole load of new functionality to make it quicker and easier. And in terms of progress reporting, we can see here we've got a breakdown of all the different items that we're measuring on site across the different zones, and we can see very clearly the status of each of those with color coding. So we can see anything that's red hasn't yet been started, anything that's green is 100% completion, and obviously blue is then sort of work in progress, shades of gray between that if you like. And in terms of updating progress, it's really a case of just dragging these sliders across as you walk around site with an iPad. So much more visual, much more intuitive how to use, and making the power a lot clearer. So if we dip out into the software now, and again, I'm conscious of time here, we haven't got time to go into huge detail to every corner of the software, but what I want to show you here is the key things. So if you're new to Chalkstring, just to explain, this black toolbar here manages all your off-site functionality. So this is where you'd go to manage your accounts and look at all your different various contacts and your materials and pricing and all your projects and so on. So this black toolbar is very much the off-site side of the software. And then when you've selected a project, so for example, if we take this top project here, this Radisson Hotel Southampton, and I select that project, this then takes you through to the on-site version of the software. So within here, we've got all the tools that relate to this project in terms of running the commercials of the project. So tracking progress, ordering materials, paying labor, putting applications in, etc. So I will dip between the black and the blue menus. One is off-site, the other is on-site. The other thing worth saying here as well is this is a true cloud-based system. So you can, wherever you type in mychalkstring.com, you can access your data, be it on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, for wherever you are around the world. So the first thing I want to show is the estimating side of things. So if we pick on this Southampton Radisson Hotel project to kick off with, we can see all the information about this project is laid out. We've got all the project information. We've got all our links and files in here, so we can store things like drawings and photographs and so on in here if you want to everything's stored together. You can have multiple work packages. So if I take the dry lining work package in this case, have a look at it. The software is based on the concept of rate build-ups and bills of quantity. So if we look at the rate build-ups first of all, we can see that this project has 4 different wall types within it. This has come in from a bill. And of course, you can have as many of these as you wish to, but this project just has 4 different, or 2 different wall types at different heights in this case. So 4 different bill items. And each of these obviously has a name, a unit of measurement, description, and you can see here you've got the £171 is the cost for that wall, and £214.97 is the sale price for that wall. If we expand this, then this is the new rate build-up I was talking about earlier on, where you can then start to see all the information you need in there in a very, very compact format. So this particular wall is actually 15mm sound block on a 70C stud with a 50mm APR on it. We can see that it's been broken down into, first of all, a first fix in this case, which is the metalwork, the heads and the studs in this case, and within there we can see all the materials we need and all the labor we need laid out. As we scroll down, we've then got the first fix boarding, and then the second fix boarding, and then the plastering. So the software breaks it down, or you break it down within the software to these various different fixes, and these are measurable items. And really the purpose of that is that when you come to valuations later on, you're going to want to break it down and value each of these individual fixes. So within each one, you've got all the materials laid out, you've got your quantities, and obviously you can control these numbers. You can put wastage allowances in. You've got your selected supplier pricing. So if I take that 72mm channel, at the moment we're paying £2.61 for that. If I change that, you can see I've got at my fingertips all my available pricing within the system. So I've got SIG pricing, CCF pricing, etc. And I can change any of these I want to at any point. So the software is automatically giving me an overall cost and value for this based on that chosen supplier pricing. We also have things like contingencies now in here. So for example, if you don't wish to break down all your consumables, your screws and your nuts and bolts and mastic, you can put a contingency allowance in here if you wish to. But ultimately, this is then defining the price for that wall. And then your bill of quantities. So again, if you've seen Chalkstring before, this is a new format for the bill. So here we have our 4 different wall types. We've created different zones across the top. Again, you don't have to create zones, but if you choose to, it's a way of controlling your project and breaking down the structure of your project. So these zones could be plots, or they could be apartments, or they could be levels, anything you want. They're just ways of breaking down your quantities, as you can see. And so you can see in here, wall type 1 is £214.97 per metre, and we've got 2,350 metres, gives us a total value at £500,000 of that work. So that's the concept of what we're doing is rate build-ups and quantities. Needless to say, you can also put prelims in here and you can make adjustments. A couple of things I wanted to show here on the estimating side of things. Some other new functionality we've now got is the ability to import the client bill. So if you've received a bill of quantities from your client in Excel format, you can now bring that straight into Chalkstring and build your project from that and price based off the imported bill. You can also produce quote requests, material quote requests, and labor quote requests. So if you wanted now to get project specific pricing for this project, I can generate a summary of my materials that are required for the project. So I've just flipped this into Excel, and hopefully what you should see now is a breakdown of just the materials that we need on this project. And as we scroll across to the right hand side, you can see a total requirement of quantities that we need for this project. So you could send this out to your supplier or number of suppliers and get them to put their pricing in these cells here. And then you can import that straight back into the project and update your project with their project specific best pricing. You can do the same with labor as well, and also supply and fit quotes. And at any point you want, you can export out material bills and labor bills. So if you want to know pre-contract what your materials requirement is, this is for a call-off order. Then again, just focusing on materials here, we can see we've got a breakdown of all the materials again we need in the project, and those are then broken down across the various zones or phases of your contract. So this could be a call-off order you provide to your supplier early on in the contract to warn them about the materials you require. So there's a lot going on with estimating in Chalkstring. I covered some of the key things there. There's plenty of other things I'm not going into today because I'm focusing on the new features. If we now move on to the procurement part of it, which is the next big part that's changed. So I'm looking at this same project here now. If we go to the materials section, this section here manages everything to do with procurement. So it's the material bill, which I will go into, and it tells me exactly what materials we need on the project. We have purchase orders, both in draft, open, and complete status. We have invoices in here for checking and reconciliation. We have deliveries and even a delivery schedule in here. So everything to do with procurement is in this one area. So I can see by coming in here at any time all the materials I need. So it may be, for example, I want to order materials specifically for a given zone. And again, I stress these are just example zones. These could be anything you want. But if I want to look at the materials I require on the first floor, then straight away we filtered out just the materials we require on the first floor. We can see the materials listed down the left-hand side with all the information about them. We can see the price against them because it knows which supplier you've allocated for that material on this project. It knows the overall balance for the job. It knows the balance for that zone. So it might be then you want to start to filter down by, for example, just your metal work or different types of materials. So these are again just examples, depending on which trade you're working in. But if I search for just metal, for example, then that's filtering out now just the metal items that I require on the first floor. And it may be you want to go further than that and order just the channels or the bars. It's up to you to control this. But ultimately, by going through and changing this information, it's simply filtering out just the materials you wish to see. So I can see here my 3 materials with the balances. And you've always been able to order these or add these to the purchase orders individually. But new tools now is the ability, for example, to add them in collectively for the whole zone. So if I said I want to add in all those materials into one purchase order, we can control what percentage we wish to take in. Well, take 100% in this case, but it's worth saying you could be using this to put in, for example, 100% of the metal and then maybe 50% of the boarding. So there's different ways you can play with this. But if I add that into the order and go to my draft orders, you can see I've now got an order in draft status that's being created for me with those materials on it. So it's order 585. It's in draft order status. It's going to go to SIG because that's my chosen supplier on these materials. And we can see it's worth £11,500. And within there, I've got whatever materials you've included within this draft order. So I've got all the information about the materials, the quantities we're ordering, and so on. And this is like an Amazon shopping basket. You can have as many materials in there over time. You can build it up, obviously. And when you're ready, you then simply confirm the order. And this will ask you to put in things like delivery dates, and it knows the delivery address, and you can have site contacts in here and so on. And you can even do things like rounding up or rounding down to the nearest pack or the nearest pallet. Again, there's a bit of detail I'm not going to go into there, but the principle is you can control what it is you want to order. And when you're ready, you simply confirm the order, download it. You can put order notes in there if you want to. So if you want, deliveries must be after 2 p.m. or whatever notes you want to put in there, it's just hand type notes. Then that downloads the order for me, and that's produced a purchase order automatically based on the quantum of materials I need at those prices for that zone. So here you've got a purchase order with all the information regarding delivery at the top and order information. You've got the materials you've added in, you've got the quantities, and notice we're converting measure. So we're converting meterage, in this case of metal, into lengths and into packs. So we're making all those conversions for you to make life easier and quicker. We've got the rates in there, you've got your notes in there, etc. And that obviously can then be shared straight as a PO straight to your supplier by simply sharing it as an email copy if you want to, or you could PDF it if you prefer. It's entirely up to you. But that's your purchase order gone. Once you've done that, the software then now knows to accrue that cost into the project. So immediately we can see that we've got £11,500 worth of materials we've just committed to. So those are now within the costs for the valuations and so on, because it's a committed order. We then have the ability to log deliveries and also then to attach and check invoices here as well. So this is all happening in one place. So if, for example, I'm a site manager now, a week later, it turns up on site, I could be opening up my phone. In here, I can click on Delivered in Full, and it populates for me the quantities that we've ordered. But if, for example, we didn't get all these deliveries, so that we only had 90 packs, for example, and 70 packs of those, or whatever those figures might be, we could then get our phone out and then take a photograph on the phone and just attach a copy of the POD in here. Okay, well, I'm on a desktop here, so I don't have a camera here, but you could simply use your camera on the phone, or I could be attaching a hard copy if I wanted to. If you update the delivery totals now, we can now see that we've ordered £11,000. We've had £5,500 delivered, so it's a partially delivered order. So I can see the status of this order at all times. So if I go to my open orders, here are all the orders that have been opened on this project with all their relative status against each one of them. So you've got this growing list of orders, and I can see all the ones that are partial, some have been sent, one's been fulfilled, etc. So at some stage, an invoice is going to come in, and at that point, I can search through by order number, go back into that same page, and I can then attach the invoice in here as well. So this is an admin function. So if I call that demo, 9999 or whatever it might be, just to give it an invoice reference, we can put the value in it. So let's say it's 11587.50, which is the order value, as you can see at the top there. We can take a copy of the invoice and attach that in here. And the purpose for putting this in here is because if you do this, you've got, just pull the, sorry, I just want to find the invoice. Here we go, SIG invoice. The purpose of that now is you've got a copy of the invoice within the system, so it's much easier to reconcile and check that now against the deliveries and the POD. And when that invoice is saved, you've now got the ability to check it, approve it, query it, etc. So that invoice we can see now in the system, demo 9999, is in review status. In this case, we've got a warning on it, and the warning is simply saying that if we approve the full payment, it will exceed the value that's been delivered to date. So it's giving you those sorts of warnings for you to flag those sorts of things up. If the invoice value is higher than the order value, it would also tell you. But ultimately, you can go through here, choose to put a different value in if you want to, or you can approve the whole lot. It's entirely up to you. You can put queries in, etc. But ultimately, you can approve it or reject it or query it, etc. And the software now also knows all the invoices in the system. So here's all the invoices that we've got against this project with their various status. So hopefully that gives you a picture of the procurement side of things with the new material bills, the new sort of power of how to control the material bills. The next area I want to cover, if I may, is the progress side of things, progress and valuations. And within here, we've made quite a few changes to how you track the progress. So you saw this screenshot earlier on. I could be walking around site now with an iPad in my hands, looking at the various different products in the bill, and I can search on those if I want to. I can filter out again on zones. I won't bother, but I can filter on zones. I can filter out on products and just pick the wall types you want, that sort of thing. And as we walk around site, we can see the status of each zone of all that work. And we can also see collectively the status across the whole project. So if I go to wall type 2, 2.73 meters, we can see we've done 25%. So we've done £63,000 of a total of £255,000. And let's say, for example, I'm on first floor now, but we haven't yet done any of the work. So on my iPad, I could quite simply be dragging these across, saying we've done the first fix, we've done the second fix, and maybe we've done 50% of the second fix boarding. So this is why we break this information down within the rate build-up, so as you can measure these things. And as you move these items across, you can see the value being increased for you. So at the moment, we've done £37,000 out of a total of 63, and as I move that across, you can see that value increases to £44,000. So it's creating your internal value for you. And anytime you save the changes, it updates the status here so you can see what's going on. And you've also got here a preview of what your outgoing application would look like if you produce an application from here. So we can see at this point, based on me updating that progress, we can see we've done so far to date £613,000 worth of work, measurable work. We've got £28,000 worth of materials on site, which is including. This includes, I would stress, all the variations, all the different work packages. Therefore, we've done £640,000 of work so far. This is the first application, so we haven't got anything to deduct from it, and therefore this application will be for £641,000. You can also see your progress in a different way. So we have what we call a progress map, where this is going to give me the ability to drill in. So for example, if I look at my dry lining here on those 4 zones, we can see the status of those 4 zones. So if I was standing on 2nd floor, for example, I can drill into that, and I can see those are the 4 different wall types. And as you start to tick each one off and update the progress, the color of these changes, so you can visually see the status of your whole project right from the get-go. This then means that when you want to apply for your payment to your contractor at the month end, I can now go in and again preview the application if I wish to see what the value will be if I create the application now. We do have the option in here to be able to overbook, as I said earlier on. So if you wanted to, for any reason, we can overbook any of these and increase the value and the external valuation whilst holding the internal valuation exactly the same. So we're managing both internal and external valuations simultaneously. But ultimately, if I wanted to generate an application based on this, and I just generate the application for payment, the software is now in the background creating my detailed application for me, ready for submission. Takes 5 or 10 seconds because it's obviously doing a fair bit of work. So just refresh it. There we go. So we've just generated application number 577 to Waits Construction. It's in held status, and we can see it's for £641,000. And by downloading that, you can then see what the software is prepared for you. So this is a typical application. As I said earlier on, you can have different formats of this. You could have a residential sort of matrix white card format. This is more of a commercial bill in this example here. But you can see you've got an application cover with all your main information on it regarding the work you've done, both contract scope and variations, the progress, what you're applying for in terms of value, all the materials on site automatically included for you, and therefore your overall value. And then, of course, each work package has their own additional information. So for example, if I wanted just to come into the ceilings work package, I can see here's my ceiling. So I've got an MF ceiling in this case and a grid and tile ceiling. These are the different levels in this project with the different quantities against them. And then I can see the progress on a zone by zone basis with the associated value. And that then comes down to the bottom and obviously gives me the total value. So you've got a very detailed breakdown and justification for your overall figures you're claiming. The key here is you haven't had to do this manually, and there's no errors because it's been automated for you. And you've even got things like materials on site in here as well. So you've got a breakdown of all the materials that are on site, together with the quantity and also the overall price with a markup which you can control. So it's all about speed and productivity. So all these things that are going on are, of course, the software's tracking all this, because within here we can then also start to put in the applications and certify them as well. We can do all that if you wanted to. At any point you can take an application, you can certify it within the software. All this information then is being reported back to you at all times in these charts. And this is really the 4th part of the main things I'm wanting to show here. So we've looked at estimating, we've looked at procurement, we've looked at valuations, and this is the real-time reporting aspect of the software. So these charts are showing me all the information. It's the health of the project in real time. So I can see my various work packages across the top here. I can see if I look at, for example, screeding, I can see we've done 39% of the work so far based on revenue. And we can see nothing's been certified yet. Nothing's gone out as an open application yet, but we've done £77,000 of work in progress at this point, which takes us to 39%. I can see the costs there are running at 33%. So costs actually are better than revenue, which is good. So my cost and my progress here side by side. I can drill in and start to see where that's been spent in terms of materials and labor. I can pull off reports showing my accrued costs and my actual costs. Again, probably too much information for today's session. I can see my projections here, so we can see the job was secured at £1.5 million, and we budgeted to make 17% on the job in terms of margin, and we budgeted 30% for materials, and we budgeted 48% for labour, etc. And those figures never change. But in the real world, of course, the job has moved on, and we now have a higher contract sum, and we can see that we're tracking closer to 19% in this job, which is good. So everything's going to schedule. We can see all our projected costs down here, our projected revenues. We've got our projected margins, both at the end of the job, so at completion, we're on track to make 19% on the job. But at this point in the contract, we've made 42%. So we've clearly overbooked or been cautious with our costs and been careful, and we've made a better margin at this point in the contract as a result. You've got a breakdown of all your applied and certified revenues in there. You've got all your accrued and actual costs. You've got a breakdown of all your costs to this point. So this dashboard has a lot of information in it, and it's all live, it's all real time, it's constantly being updated with everything you're doing, every order you're placing, every valuation you're doing. And furthermore, this information can also be displayed for multiple projects. So everything I've shown so far is been very much for one specific contract. Within here, I can then take multiple projects simultaneously, and you could be looking by client here or all your live projects if you prefer. And within there, we can then start to see all our collective information for all the projects that are running through the business in terms of projected revenues, projected costs. All that information is all available to you here in pie charts. And of course, any stage you need to, you can export out this consolidated information into reports. So on this particular instance, I've got 4 different projects I've selected manually. Again, this could be every single project you're running. It doesn't have to be just the 4 you want. And I can see all the KPIs now regarding projected revenues, costs, and margin. We can see what we've been applied for here, what's been certified. So the Radisson Hotel, you can see we have created an application. We haven't yet sent it to the client, so we haven't yet applied for it, and therefore it hasn't been certified yet. We can see the margins we've made at the last certified application. We can see the work in progress that's been accrued, the current margin, actual costs, etc. So all that information is there for your whole business across all your projects. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavor for the software. There's a lot more besides that, clearly, and there are things I've skipped through there for the purpose of today's webinar. Clearly, if you wish a more detailed look at the software and you want to cover the things I've not looked at, and particularly a lot of people want to know more about things like the material pricing, the database of materials and prices and so on, we can cover all that. A lot of people also like to know more about the account section of the software, where this is where you manage all your orders and invoices and applications, and this is where it exports out to the account software you're using. Again, we can go into all that detail in a more detailed session if you wish. So for now, if I flip back to the presentation and sort of almost drawing to a close at this point. So in summary, the main benefits which I'm hoping you can see from what we've gone through today are the fact you've got a far more streamlined system because everyone is accessing the same set of data, working more collaboratively. And of course, if you're not constantly transferring data and having to communicate in different ways, it's a lot more efficient by using that single system for everything. So you set the job up once at the beginning when you tender it, and the information is in there for the duration of the contract. Obviously, there's an increased productivity angle if you're not having to create valuations manually and create applications and monthly reporting and CVRs manually at the end of the month. We have some customers who talk about spending a whole week on that at the end of every month. Well, that's done for you all the time because you have a live CVR in Chalkstring and it's available update all times. There's very little information that's required to be re-entered. So you're not constantly re-entering the same data over and over and over, which of course does not only waste time, but it also brings risk into play. You've got accessibility of this data from anywhere. So if you're a business manager and you're on holiday and you want to just check in and see a project and just see how it's tracking, look for any problems, you can access this data from wherever, whenever, on whatever device you want. The over-ordering aspect should be eliminated because if you know exactly to the nearest nut and bolt what materials you need, and the software's helping you filter that out and include that in the purchase order, you're not ordering based on rule of thumb or guesstimate, so you're not ending up with the wastage which you might traditionally have had. So you're not going to be skipping materials and eroding your margins. And that's not just the same for materials, but that's also overpaying your subcontractors, which we haven't really talked about in this session. You can control all your costs much better, because if you can see clearly what you've ordered, what's required, what's on site, what the balance is, and even every deviation. So if you're going over cost on anything, we can give you reports to say, well, you're overspending on this material, or you're over ordering on that material. So that information is live and at your fingertips at all times. So if we can help you control your costs, we should be driving your margins up. So obviously it comes down to driving your profitability up across all projects. And I've got a case study relating to that, which I'll give you in a second. You've got that instant visibility of all your projects and how they're tracking at all times. So that should give you reassurance as business owners. And ultimately, if we're giving you more efficiency and more productivity, you therefore don't need to go and hire more staff, more resource as your business grows. So if you've got ambitious growth plans for your business, you should be able to grow faster, scale faster, without needing to go and rack up your overheads, your staff in the same way. Just a case study which is available on the website, and again, we'll email this to you after the session. But there's an MD of a business we work with, SCS, up in near Wakefield Way, saying that it makes it easy to control their costs, plan the cash flow, and ensure that each project delivers targeted profit. So we can send that to a 2-page case study if you're interested in finding out more about that company and what they're doing with the software. Again, we'll send that to you. And we also have another case study you might be interested in, which is it's about 3 pages, but it talks very specifically about another customer who used Chalkstring to drive their margins up. So in this particular case, they secured the job at tender at about 11% margin. That was the budget margin, but they walked away at final account with closer to 19%. And there's a bunch of different ways in which they did that, which are discussed within the case study. So this is based on a real contract. It's about a £7 million contract, decent sized job, but they almost doubled their margin from tender stage to final account, and they put or attribute a lot of that down to using Chalkstring and some of the key features in Chalkstring. So you may be interested in having a look at that. Again, it's on our website, and we will email that across to you. So suffice to say, thank you very much indeed for listening to the webinar today. I hope you found it informative. Apologies for the false start again with the audio. That was my mistake, as I say, but hopefully it's given you the information you need. If you do require more information, if we've struck a chord with anything we've said today, or if you want a more detailed demonstration to either go through things in more detail or indeed to go to parts of the software that we've not looked at today, then please do get in contact with us, hello@chalkstring.com. Be happy to discuss your requirements with you. Just checking the time, we have 5 minutes, so I do want to try and answer a few questions if I can. We've had a few questions come in, so if I may, I've got 5 minutes just to pick off a few of these questions, but I will stop on the 11 o'clock as promised. Okay, so the first question I've got is, what about the setup? So I'm presuming that means getting the software set up with all the information, pricing, materials, and so on. That is something that we do for you. For every new customer who comes into the business and signs up to Chalkstring, there is a setup required in terms of we need to obviously get your materials into the system, your pricing into the system, all that sort of thing. So we set all this up for customers when they join us. So for example, if I do a search here on just using British Gypsum, a lot of people on the audience today are from the interior fit out trade, so I'm sort of focusing on that. Then you can see there's all the materials for BG, for example, in the library. So we create all this database for you with every customer as you sign up. So we create the databases, and we need to know what materials you use, what your supplier pricing is, who your subbies are, who your clients are, all that kind of information. And we create that for you and set that up so you've got a live system that's good to go very quickly. And we also provide training as well. I mean, that wasn't part of the question, but we sort of put setup and training together as one thing. It's all part of getting you going when you sign up. So that's, hopefully that covers that question about setup. The next question I've got is, what about unique materials and supplier pricing? So, well, I guess to a degree that almost falls off what we're talking about here. So this is a database of different materials, but you have the ability at any stage you want to create new materials. So if you needed to during the tender stage to create something specific, you can at any point create a material yourself, and all you need to do is give it a name and brand, any specific information, what type of material it is, how you're measuring it, all those sorts of things. So yes, you can create new materials anytime you want to, but we find most customers tend to use their same sort of data over and over quite a lot, and that's where your databases of materials really starts to come into play. And of course your prices as well. So if you've got specific pricing, we could go in here and let's look at British Gypsum again, just to keep consistency. You can see in here I've got 5 different price lists for BG products. The bottom 3, it appears, are all my sort of standard list pricing from various different suppliers. So I've got CCF, I've got SIG and Galaxy. Those are the 3 suppliers. And then we've also got project specific pricing in here as well. So yes, this information can be set up and managed by you at any time you want to. So hopefully that answers the question regarding materials and prices. And then the third question, I'm going to run out of time, but I'll answer this one, and then we'll answer any other questions directly if we may, if that's okay with you. And the third question relates to mobile usage. So yeah, because this system is a full cloud-based system, which is web browser-based, anywhere where you type my.chalkstring.com, you can access this software. So you could type it into your phones, tablets, anywhere you want to. So it's fully accessible, both on mobiles and on desktop, laptops, etc. What I should also say as part of that question is the wider topic is that you can control admin of who uses the system and who can see the system. So within any given business, you can set up who your users are, and you can have as many or as few users as you need to match your business. And it is a subscription model, so you pay per user. So you can have all your users set up, and then you can see alongside each user, you can have different privileges given to them, or different roles essentially. And again, this is totally controlled by you. So if we went into roles, it may be, for example, your site-based team. So thinking particularly your site managers, it may be that your site managers are set up with a different set of permissions. And a lot of customers, for example, don't want the site managers to be able to see any accountancy information or any commercial information. But as we go down, we can see that these are the areas which are being ticked in this case for this particular role. You can control, this is all about deliveries and those sorts of things. So every business can set up different roles with different permissions, and those permissions can then be applied to individual users. So that if they're using on a mobile on site and they don't have permissions for certain things, they won't see certain functionality and certain tools to match their role. So listen guys, I'm pretty much 11 o'clock on the stroke, so I'm going to have to wrap it there. But as I say, we will answer any other outstanding questions. Thank you very much indeed again for your time. Hopefully you found it useful. And finally, there's our contact details if you wish to discuss further or find out more about the product. Many thanks indeed. Have a great day, guys. All the best.